birds. With spring coming up fast, I'm pretty excited for this year's lambs. We have a handful of ewes due to deliver. And one of the best parts of Shetland sheep is that you never know what color you're gonna get. So I thought it'd be fun to take a guess at what colors we might see, as well as other things we might see pop up in our lambs this coming spring. Our breeding season went by super fast. That's just how it is with small seasonal flocks. We had 60 active days of breeding. Lamie and Lily had a pretty quiet heat. They didn't holler at the rams to come by, and usually the girls will mount each other, frolic around the pasture with the ram, kicking up their heels. But this season, they barely acted different from any other day. And the only sign of being bred was when Rami no longer checked their urine or showed any interest in romancing them. Most sheep's window for breeding is around 24 to 36 hours. Then the cycle repeats again roughly in 13 to 19 days. I separate out our girls in their respective microflocks and pair them each with a ram. Our midnight black ram, Void, didn't settle any of the ewes he was penned with. I don't fault him though. I had to separate him from his mama, much to his protest. I have heard people say that it's cruel to separate them, but the reality is he will breed his mother given the opportunity. Sheep can and will breed their sisters or mother, even brothers, as young as 2 months old. And sheep don't follow human social norms. Also, puberty hits different for livestock, as well as other animals. He was really young, several months old, but just weaned from his mama, who he was also trying to woo. I thought of using him as a teaser ram for this breeding season, but I need to either order or make a harness for him to make that work. Regardless, Rami was more than happy to cover for him. I think next year I'll work on some teaser harnesses. This is so I can hopefully get them bred closer together or all in the same month. Overall, the breeding season went by pretty smoothly. I have their breeding dates marked and thought it'd be fun to go over the possible color combinations we can expect and briefly cover other wool quality genetics that could possibly show up in our lambs this coming spring. That being said, I don't breed for a specific or singular color in mind and mainly focus on quality. I hope by using our sheep as a starting point, it'll help you in understanding how color works in your flock too. There are few naturally colored sheep breeds out there, both wool and hair sheep, from Gotlands, Icelandics, Jacob's sheep to Catalans, as well as Cracker sheep, just to name a few. The rules for color genetics, wool characteristics, and more all follow the same rules, breed to breed. So first, let's break this down. For sheep, all sheep breeds, there are 4 main factors that influence the color of wool that you see on the lamb. A helpful acronym commonly used is BASE, base. Each letter represents a gene, and each sheep will get 1 gene from each parent, equaling a total of 8 genes. 4 genes from the dam and 4 genes from the sire. But because these genes have an order of dominance as well as a masking ability, it changes the way we see the color. For example, we describe this as a phenotype. Phenotype is what we see when we're looking at our sheep. There may be other stuff working on in the background, the genes, but that's okay because we have ways to work with that. This is one of the reasons why there's so many colors within one breed versus another, where they've selectively narrowed down what's there. In Icelandics, Shetlands, and other naturally colored sheep, there are many shades or tones of each wool color. Then we add in the facial markings and wool patterns, so we get over 40 different possible colors or shades of fleece alone. Also, apologies in advance for any and all mispronunciations. It's not a matter of if, but when. Now when it comes to our sheep, Rami is a black Catnauget. In other colored sheep, you may see this pattern described as Badgerface. With the Shetland Sheep Breed Registry, I have a nice, brief genetic blueprint of his history. It's nice, but if you don't have registered sheep or know your sheep's genealogy, I'll show you some clues I use later on that may help you too. His sire is a Mioget, so a type of golden fleece or light golden brown. His dam or mama is black, which is dominant gene in sheep. As a side note, Catnauget or Badgerface is co-dominant with Guilmoget, which is also the inverse of Badgerface. So all the black or brown face and belly markings will show as white. What this means is that instead of one gene being dominant over the other, both traits have the possibility of appearing in your sheep. So as you can see, things can get pretty colorful fast. So let's pull out our acronym BASE and our Punnett square. It'll get much more complex than what they taught me, at least in school. So let's draw this out. The first letter is B, and it stands for the black or brown allele. The black and brown gene act as a sort of switch. So if your sheep is brown based, the gene will remove all of the black pigment from the fibers, so you can't have any black. They can have a very dark, almost dark chocolate brown, but never a really true black. Remy sire is a Miojet, a type of brown. In order to be brown, the sire had to have both pairs of the basic color recessive brown, or lowercase b for short. If I didn't know his genetic history or know any of the lambs he's thrown, then I would just mark him down as an uppercase B for dominant black and a dash, since his phenotype is a black Catnaudet and it may be hiding a brown allele from the parent. But since we have his paperwork, we know it's an uppercase B, dominant black, and lowercase b representing recessive brown. Next up is the Agouti Pattern Gene, the letter A in base. The Catnaudet or Badgerface pattern is commonly symbolized by the letters AB. Also, he's been graying a lot over time, so starting with what's called sugar lips, which are the white fibers or hairs mixed in their base coat. It looks like they ate some sugar and got all over their face. So each year, his black markings have grown more and more gray. The gray allele is co-dominant with Catnaudet and Gulmaget and symbolized by the letters AG. The gray allele is dominant to solid or self-coloration as well, but not to tan and white coloring. So I'm not sure which parent he's gotten the green pattern from, but it's there. These pennant squares are going to get pretty crowded. The next spot is the spotting gene. I've seen this referred to as the S loci as well. Spots are recessive in sheep, so the sheep has to carry 2 sets of the gene in order to really show it some spotting. I don't see anything indicating on him, nor notes on his records to show any spotting a few generations back. I've heard it in identifying genes, it's similar to stargazing, in that, say, a specific gene is like a constellation. When you look up at the sky and you see a few stars in a row, you know it's Orion's belt. Even if you may not see the whole constellation due to the clouds, you can still tell from that little bit peeking through what the constellation is. Genetics are similar. In some allele pairs, one allele of that pair may not completely hide the other allele. So, for example, if you have a dominant, non-spotting gene, capital S for short, from one parent paired with the recessive spotting gene, lowercase s, from another, so the spotting pattern gene is similar to our Orion's constellation. In recognizing this play in the spotting gene, some hints that the sheep are carrying the spotting gene may be a coronet marking or star on the top of its head, or a white spot on the tip of its tail. Remy doesn't have that, so until I see evidence through breeding or subsequent lambs, I'm placing a capitalized double S for not spotting dominant. If he had the recessive spotting allele, I would indicate that with a lowercase s. The extension gene is next. It's a type of wild card. If you have colored sheep, throw a white lamb and you may wonder, where did this come from? So weird because white is dominant, but this gene tells the genes what they can or cannot express. So if it is an E+, everything can show. But if it's an ED, which is the extension gene dominant, nothing can show, just the base pigment. This gives the illusion of a self-colored or solid black or solid brown sheep, but it's hiding a little secret, or a white lie for fun. So sheep colors can be wild, complicated even, but that's the fun part. I don't know what his allele is here, so I'm waiting for unknown or to be determined. On to wool traits. He has long wavy wool of medium length and crimped, single-coated fleece which is extremely soft, downy even. The length is ideal commercially for many hand spinners as well as meet the requirements for most mills. Most mills have a minimum length. Cotton, for instance, can have too short fibers, or a highly crimped wool fiber may be too short to run through your local mill, or may pose a bit of a challenge for spinners who like to long draw at the wheel, lowering its overall value. In many studies, everything from the crimps per inch to staple length are all highly heritable, which means anywhere from 20 to 40% heritability from parents. The other percentage is influenced by the environment. What this means is that they are easy to change and make visible differences in your flock over the course of years, whereas other traits have a low heritability and may take generations to move in a specific generation. So when buying sheep, you aren't just buying a fluffy yarn seed, but inheriting a legacy. On to his other traits. He has a beautiful set of horns. Horns in sheep are known to be determined mainly by 3 genes. The Pollott gene, X-linked poles. This means only males have horns and not the ewes. And then another gene, which governs both ewes and rams that have horns or are polled. There is another gene responsible for multiple horns in Jacob's sheep. Unfortunately, over the centuries, we are losing these rare genetics. Half-polled sheep tend to have smaller, thinner horn set than Rami has, and they just grow way slower. A full-polled sheep wouldn't have any horns but knobs or maybe a bump instead, maybe with a hair swirl or a divot in their head as a sort of respect to what once was. There are Shetland sheep ewes with horns. Fish, our white Shetland sheep ewe, has a small button-sized horn knob, which kind of looks more like a scur even. But Rami's line does not have them, so I don't expect any horned ewes passed down from his line. I don't have any information on his parents, milkiness, twinning rate, or meat characteristics. He's a heritage breed, built like a dual-purpose breed, if you know what I mean. And you just don't get that carcass heel you would get from a Dorper or a Texel sheep. That's fine for our family, but for other families, that'd be depressing. For our ewes, let's start with Lammy. She's more of a designer sheep or a mix of various dairy breeds. The shepherd spent years cultivating this ideal dairy sheep for our climate, so though I did get to see her beautiful sisters, aunts, mother, and grandmothers, and I know what breeds he used for his sheep, I don't know the specific genetic history of her as an individual sheep. So she's pretty white, a very modern, continental style sheep. She originally had a very pink nose as a lamb, but over time she's developed some black spots. So her B factor I'll put down as a capital B dash. The dash is a marker for unknown, and there may be some recessive brown hiding in there, but until I see it in her lambs or do some line breeding, I'll leave the dash as a placeholder. Her pattern is white, AWT in shorthand. It's dominant and masks anything else. I can't see any hints of spotting due to all the whiteness, and I've heard that sometimes if your sheep is super whitey white, that indicates a homozygous spotting gene, or lowercase ss for short, and that they are showing spotting, and that's why their wool is an insane shade of white. I haven't developed that eye of discernment though, so I'm going to use a double dash place card, science for IDK for right now. In some modern breeds, the E factor doesn't cause as many surprises as it does in some heritage breeds due to the centuries of selective breeding for white wool, but I'm not sure of the relevance here, so more double dashes for Lammy. She is fully polled and comes from fully polled lines on both sides, so big bet zero contribution of horns from her line. She milks out really well, and though I'd like better attachments, I love how she milks out with ease and has a beautiful udder texture. She has the ideal personality for milking. I want a sheep that looks forward to getting milked, handled, readily hops onto that milking stand, is patient and mellow. Personally, I found it to be about 50% personality being inherited from the dam or sire. That includes budding tendency. I haven't found any research on the exact numbers, so take this with a grain of salt. Anyway, with Lammy being such a good girl and Remy having such a mellow, laid-back attitude, the odds are good for more mellow lambs. The lambs for Ramy and Lammy have a high chance of being all white, so a bit boring for me. The good side is that it's easier to meet the minimum weights for the mills to process. Shetland sheep don't produce as much wool in weight than, say, a merino sheep, so meeting that minimum weight can be tougher, especially if you factor in all the individual colors of the fleece. So having all the sheep the same color does help in reducing overall work and cost, at least commercially. Just something to consider if you want to sell your wool to the public. Even so, in terms of hidden color, the base colors most likely will be black. If there is a brown allele, it will be masked by the black allele, contributed from both sides. The black base color is dominant and only takes one copy of the gene to make the sheep appear black. The lambs have potential to carry the Catmaget gene, but we won't be able to see it due to the masking of the white. The ewes will be pulled, the ram lambs will be half pulled, so weak, pithy scur horns that are more prone to getting knocked off with fooling around. For fleece quality, I would love a better handle in Lammy's lambs for next to skin projects, but for felt project and spinning blankets, it's all good. In regards to milk yield, as well as how well put together the udder will be, I can see an overall body condition. Remy's not meaty, which is good for dairy, but you've probably heard enough rambling from me on this one. Moving on. Okay, so what about brown sheep? On the other end of the spectrum, we have Lily. She's a brown sheep, also known as a moret. A lot of dark brown sheep when they're born are so dark they may look black, but are never truly black. A clue to the lamb having a brown base is that there's a very slightest tinge of like orange almost around their eyelids. Also, they tend to light up by 2 months of age as well. To get a brown base color, the brown gene turns off the expression of all black pigment. So if you see a brown sheep with touches of black, the base color will be black, not brown. With how this constellation of genes work, Lily is no different. Lily's sire is registered as white and her dam was black, but in order for her color to show up, both parents had to be carriers of the recessive brown gene. On her side of the diagram, I'll write her down as a lowercase double b for her Agouti factor or pattern gene. Yes, she has a crew in it, but I'm going to tackle this in bits. So, though she was born with a solid brown fleece, there are some bits of white fibers sprinkled throughout her fleece. Also, each year she's grown more and more white. She has a white coronet or star on the top of her head, with even more white spots appearing on her face. A lot of sheep tend to lighten up with age, as well as with sun bleaching, and it can give the appearance of a differently colored sheep. The white fibers in our brown sheep, Lily, are different than that. So is this part of the extension wildcard showing up, or perhaps something else? Also, given that Lily's sire is white, does that mean that the extension wild's at play? Somewhere down the line, would we see a white lamb? Could be. Time and more testing will tell. She didn't have the characteristic sugar lips that usually indicates a grain allele at play for the longest time. She's a very dark brown, so we know there are no white dilution or modifier genes affecting her color. And we can knock off the light Badgerface pattern, the Gomolget pattern, as well as the Ketmaget or Badgerface pattern, giving her solid brown fleece. So the closest Agouti pattern factor that I can see to describe the bigger picture would be the uppercase, lowercase a self-coloration or solid color pattern. Remember how I mentioned that constellation earlier? Well, one constellation is the spotting gene. It peeks through with the white caps and white tips on the tail. So even though Lily looks solid brown, she's actually spotted, just more of a big S, little s. Or one gene for dominant non-spotting paired with the recessive spotting gene. The effect of the white fibers interspersed throughout her coat are calling card for the AG grain pattern. The grain gene is dominant to solid pattern gene. Sometimes the gray gene can wash out another pattern, like in the case when combined with the Badgerface pattern. So the gray will mix white fibers in with the color fibers, but the white areas will still stay white. Another good breed to see the grain gene in action is the Gotland sheep. They're renowned for their grain. At the end of the video, I'll briefly cover some more color patterns that may pop up for you, but I don't have in my flock, and some more clues to help guide you that Lily, Rami, or Remy don't have. So moving on. She's a polled ewe, though it's not shown in her registration papers. Her sire is also fully horned, and what that means for the lambs is that the ewe lambs will be fully polled, and the ram lambs will have a beautiful horn set. For Shetland sheep, the Breed Association recommends waiting for the lambs to be at least 6 months old before registering them. Their colors can and do change. A black lamb may turn gray in a few months. Usually you can see the hints of the grain allele by the white flecks of wool on their lips or tips of ears, called sugar lips. With Tunis sheep, their deep red at birth may fade to a more cream, and I've noticed my lambs will change from a warm oatmeal coat at birth to a soft white later on. Though the hair on their face is less likely to change and retain their color, especially with exposure to sun. If you're raising hair sheep, the colors just don't tend to be as dramatic with age or the environment as with wool breeds. The same with the tog or the outer coat, and some dual-coated sheep. So, on to the guesses. There's a high probability of a black base and a slim chance of a brown based lamb. There are high chances of more badger-faced lambs and maybe some spots. Lily's coat can be described overall as kindly, soft, and single-coated, but I have found the rare outer coat fiber while coloring her fleece. Usually white and much coarser than her high crimp soft wool. She has what's described as English-style coat locally, but across the pond I've heard it described as a kindly coat. We also have a long coat style Shetland, and not too often here, the dual-coated Shetland sheep. I really hope the lambs take more of the personality of Rami. He has a pretty strong set of genes, and for milking, though Lily readily hops onto the stand, after several months of milking, she tends to kick, and she tends to go feral during her pregnancies. Luckily, once she gives birth, it all goes away, and she can't wait to show off her babies, but I still prefer a bolder, calmer personality of Rami and her lambs. And so, to wrap up the odds and ends I came across in my research, I'm including the references to the papers, articles, books, and clubs for your enjoyment. I found a link to a sheep coat calculator. If you want the link, leave the comment link so I can send you the link. A lot of links can go bad over time, so this just makes sure I don't get flagged for spreading bad links. And pause the video to screenshot the diagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sheep colors can be complex, but if we break it down into their mini parts, it's hopefully easier to digest. The main thing is to focus on the bigger picture when it comes to selecting for traits, and not to lose sight of making a healthy, resilient sheep and to cull heavily. The worst is to have a functionally obsolete or sickly sheep with a flashy coat. And if you made this far, thank you. Leave me a heart emoji of your favorite wool color if you can. Until next time, stay soft.